Al Jalal building collapsed after being struck by multiple missiles. It housed residential apartments and a number of news outlets. The building was evacuated after receiving a warning an hour before the strike. Al Jazeera has condemned the bombing as a clear act to stop journalists reporting on events. Dozens more rockets have been fired from Gaza into Israel. One man was killed when a rocket exploded in a street in the Ramat Gan suburb of Tel Aviv. Nearby buildings were damaged by the shrapnel. Warning sirens have been sounding in Tel Aviv and across central Israel. 10 people have been killed in Israel since Monday, including 2 children. Al Jazeera's Safwat Al-Khalout joins us live from Gaza. To an escalation again today.
Well, let's say in the last hour, the scale of the fire or the strength of the fire is less than earlier today, after a heavy escalation from both sides, from the Israelis and then from the fighting groups. As we know that several places have been heavily attacked by the Israeli raids or by the Israeli army, including our office, and last night also was another massacre in Al-Shati refugee camp, which is few hundred meters from far from where we are now. We have mobilized. We moved to another safer place as Al Jazeera now, and we are trying to rebuild everything from the beginning. We started the emergency plan, and I believe we can continue our reporting. Back to what the spokesperson of Hamas military wing, well known as Abu Ubaida, the spokesperson of Hamas of Qassam brigades, he said that the commander, general commander of the Qassam brigades, well known as Muhammad al-Daif, he gave his instructions to his fighters to halt the fire, to halt firing the rockets towards Israel, towards Tel Aviv, for a couple of hours, for lifting the closure in Tel Aviv for 2 hours. This is the first time that happens, that Palestinian fighting groups send this message. They want to show that they are the one who is controlling the battlefield, and they can also control the level of escalation. And they were sending another message to the Israeli internal also front, that we are still strong and we can hit whenever we want, and we can stop also whenever we want. From the other side also we could hear some explosions coming from the Navy, the Israeli Navy. They are hitting some empty areas in the north of Gaza Strip. We could hear also some light explosions, let's say, in comparison with previous explosions. That's why we call them light, because here we are used to hear lots of explosions, consecutive bombardments in different places. But the last hour was relatively quiet in comparison with earlier today and with previous nights. And we still don't know if, or we haven't received any information about the talks of the ceasefire that are mediated by Egypt and also watched by the United States. We heard about deep related negotiations or talks to reach the ceasefire, but on the ground there are no concrete or positive indications of a ceasefire. As you see in the background here, it's almost curfew in the Gaza Strip. Most of the people are staying home. It's not only at night, but during the day they leave only just for emergency cases, or to meet the emergency urgent needs for their families. In Gaza, there are no shelters for people to hide or to take shelters during the bombardment. On the other hand, hundreds of families they were forced to evacuate their homes, staying or across the border line between Gaza and Israel after The Israeli ground artillery fired lots of rockets or bombardments along the borders. They are taking, hundreds of families are taking from UN schools, shelters, until at least the end of this round of escalation.
Safwat Al-Haloud, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Al Jazeera has released the following statement condemning in the strongest terms the bombing and destruction of its offices by the military in Gaza, and saying it views this as a clear act to stop journalists from conducting their sacred duty to inform the world and report events on the ground. The statement went on to say the assault aims to silence the truth by killing the messenger, and that journalism is not a crime. The Associated Press released this video of its staff evacuating the building in Gaza before the Israeli airstrike. The president and CEO of the news agency, Gary Pruitt, says the company only narrowly avoided a loss of life. And he told Al Jazeera he would like to see proof that Hamas had a presence in the building.
I can tell you that we've been in that building for about 15 years with our bureau. We certainly had no sense that Hamas was there. We would like to see the evidence. We're not sure whether Hamas was there or not. We don't know. But I can tell you the impact will be that the world will know less about what's going on in Gaza because that building was leveled. It had great sight lines to show the world what was going on in Gaza, and that will be lost.
Across Gaza, families have been holding funerals for loved ones killed by Israeli airstrikes, many of them children. Laura Burden-Manley has more, and a warning there are disturbing images from the beginning of her report.
At the funeral of a child in the city of Rafah in southern Gaza, a woman in shock says only children playing with their toys. Mothers, grandmothers and families left inconsolable. Innocent victims of days of heavy Israeli airstrikes and artillery fire that destroyed homes and neighborhoods.
What has this baby done? We were sitting safely at home. We didn't hear a warning rocket. Our house got hit violently. Why? Why? Why do they bomb houses and their residents?
In the northern Beit Hanun neighborhood, people search through rubble for their belongings. Gaza is home to about 2 million people in an enclave under Israeli blockade. There are few places to escape the bombs.
Gaza is probably the most densely populated spot on earth. It has been under 14 years of air, sea and land blockade. It is a place where despair is extremely high and where civilians are trapped.
To escape the bombs, many children are sheltering in schools, but they still don't feel safe.
We ran out of our house after the air attacks and our house was bombed. We fled to the school and we were told that the smoke from the bomb was poisonous. We don't know what the poison is, and we only know that the thick smoke after the explosion was very choking.
In the United States on Thursday, House Democrat Rashida Tlaib made an emotional statement to Congress, reading the words of a Palestinian mother.
I want to read something a mother named Iman in Gaza wrote 2 days ago. She said, quote, "Tonight I put the kids to sleep in our bedroom so that when we die together."
As Al Jazeera spoke to Iman about the message, it was interrupted as bombs exploded nearby.
You can hear it actually while we're speaking. There is loud sounds of bombing. Gazan people are living terrifying nights, like every single day. We wake up to reply to messages like, "Are you alive?" And we're scared. Every single night we say that we are next.
Hamas and its allies have responded to the attacks by firing a barrage of rockets from inside Gaza. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the bombardment will not end soon. As bombs fall, rescue workers dig for survivors after a house was hit in Al-Shati refugee camp on Friday, killing 10 members of a family. Funerals are taking place throughout Gaza for those killed, which includes dozens of children. For those who survived the bombs, they're now left traumatized and terrified of further attacks. Laura Burden-Manley, Al Jazeera.
A 5-month-old baby was the only survivor from that Israeli airstrike on a house in the Al-Shati refugee camp in Gaza. Baby Omar is being treated in hospital. He suffered a broken leg, eye and throat injuries and bruising. His mother and 4 siblings all died in the attack, along with 5 other relatives. They were visiting relatives for Eid celebrations.
I call on the international community, those who support human rights and children's rights and democracy, those who penalise anyone who harms a child, to look to our children here who are being bombed with strikes that drop entire floors onto people whose body parts we have to recover.
Israeli police have fought with a crowd of Palestinian youngsters protesting peacefully in Sheikh Jarrah in occupied East Jerusalem. There have been confrontations in the neighbourhood there since last week over the threatened forced expulsion of 4 Palestinian families from their homes to make way for Jewish settlers. Israel's High Court has postponed the ruling on the evictions, but the protests continue. Israeli forces have wounded at least 29 Palestinians during Nakba Day protests in the occupied West Bank. Protests have been held in Hebron, Ramallah, Nablus and Kalkia. The rallies mark the 73rd anniversary of the day the Arab-Israeli war broke out, one day after Israel declared independence. Nakba is catastrophe in Arabic. 750,000 Palestinians either fled or were expelled from their homes during the war. 15,000 Palestinians were killed and more than 500 Arab villages destroyed. Neither they nor their descendants have been allowed by Israel to return. More than 70 years later, some 5 million Palestinians are registered by the UN as refugees. The right of return is a key demand of Palestinians and their leaders, but Israel says it would be overwhelmed. Every year, Palestinians gather to participate in demonstrations to commemorate the Nakba, Arabic, as we said, for catastrophe. They often display symbolic keys emblematic of their lost homes. Nida Ibrahim has more from a protest in Al-Bireh in the occupied West Bank, where Palestinians have been confronting Israeli forces.
These Palestinians, most of them were born after the 1990s, after the establishment of the Palestinian Authority, and they were promised on and on by their leaders that they're going to be having freedom and a state. Instead, all these people are seeing now is, if you can hear, these tear gas bombs that are being fired by the Israeli army. We've even seen the Israeli army fire live ammunition. We have 3 Palestinians who are now in a critical condition. More than 50 Palestinians were injured, according to medical sources, and the majority of these people were hit by live ammunition. These people here would tell you that they are fed up of talks of having a state, talks of having peace, while instead what they see on the ground is intensifying illegal Israeli settlement building, intensifying Israeli power and Israeli settler attacks, which often, when the Israelis say that they are investigating these allegations or these attacks, more than 95% of these attacks go unindicted. So there is a sense here that the Israelis are building in the occupied West Bank, having the upper hand, and these people here are trying to fight that. And their only way, as many of them were telling us, they don't have arms, don't have anything. And one Palestinian protester was even showing us how he was making a Molotov cocktail by adding petrol and a piece of cloth dripped in glue, and then they would fire it and try and send it towards the Israeli soldiers. It's kind of like small means, they don't have much, but they were telling us that if this is what we have to liberate Palestine, so this is what we were going to do.
Yusuf Hamash is the Norwegian Refugee Council's advocacy officer in Gaza. He, his pregnant wife and 3-year-old daughter have had to move 4 times in the last days because of the airstrikes. He joins us via Skype from Gaza. Thank you very much indeed for being with us. I want to ask you clearly about the broader situation, but I want to first of all ask you about your personal situation. It sounds quite scary.
I don't think that scary is enough word to describe the situation in Gaza. Everything started on Tuesday, 6 p.m. when I was at my apartment in Beit Lahia with my pregnant wife and my 3-year-old daughter. When the Israeli Air Forces attacked the apartment below my apartment and by a drone rocket. So usually, as we understand, a drone rocket attack, it's kind of warning that it's going to be followed by an heavier airstrikes. So what I was thinking about was just to escape from the house. And at that moment was a crazy moment that I had to deal with my terrified daughter, my pregnant wife. All what I was thinking is just we need to move out from that building. So I went to my family building at the same neighborhood. We spent the first crazy night that night. The next day I went back to my apartment, check how was the damage, collect some clothes, some stuff for my wife, and directly after I entered the apartment, they attacked it one more time. So I had to escape again. So alhamdulillah, now I have this T-shirt as outfit for the Eid. I had to go to my apartment, to my family apartment again, and it was another heavy night when the Israeli Air Forces attacked by more than 30 airstrikes in 1 minute in the same neighborhood where we live. So also the next day we had to flee to my grandparents' house, to live another night of nightmares.
Tell me, is there anywhere that people can go in Gaza to be safe, apart from trying to shelter with family and so on?
Unfortunately, I don't think that any places across Gaza can consider as safe place. Bombing and shooting is everywhere.
What's the impact? I mean, to move it to the broader question, you work for the Norwegian Refugee Council. What sort of impact has all this had on the services that are available to people, like the water or the electricity?
Unfortunately, until now, we didn't start to do our work because, what we are seeking then and allowing for the humanitarian to do their work, saving the displaced people after that people start to flee their houses 2 days ago, and especially last night to shelters. So, and this is one of our main work is to save displaced people. And until now, we are waiting that situation be more calm, or I don't know, the Israelis allowed for us to start to work freely to serve these people who had to flee their work at their places until now. Sorry.
And what about the hospitals and the electricity and so on? How are they functioning?
Actually, the issue of electricity is one of the main problems that the Gazans had to deal with since 14 years. The Israelis imposed the siege on Gaza, which affect every sector in Gaza, especially also the health sector, which was suffering since 14 years with escalation after escalation. And recently we had the Great March of Return. They had to deal with thousands of casualties. And after that, 1 year of COVID-19, and then this happened. So I didn't think that our health sector could cope with any more escalation or even more days. It's already cannot cope with the current situation before the escalation. So you can imagine how the situation with all of these casualties now.
You mentioned that you have a 3-year-old. What's your impression, apart from your own experience, of the impact on children of all this?
I think the causes on this that children had to be something to deal with in Gaza for a long time for us to deal with. As a personal experience, I had to, when I flee my family house, I had to put my wife and my daughter at her parents' house, my father-in-law. So I met her again after 2 days, and a bombing happened when I was there near them. So I grabbed my daughter, trying to hug her. I don't know, I wanted to make her feel more safe. Then I realized that my reaction, which make her afraid, not the bombing. And I realized how much hard my wife worked with her, trying to convince her that all of this bombing across Gaza is fireworks. So I think we need to focus more after this crisis finish to the impact on the children in Gaza.
Yusuf Hamash, thank you very much indeed for taking the time to talk to us. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.